Hello, my darlings. This episode was recorded a few weeks ago at Wolf's apartment. The sound quality is not all that I want it to be, but I'm still new at this and I'm still experimenting. I don't quite have the right setup for traveling. If you stick with it, you will be rewarded. Our conversation is rich in queer history, rich in tattoo history, and the intersection of both of those things. Wolf is a wonderful human. I hope that you listen all the way through. Here we go. Darlings, here it is, another episode of Ink Medicine. I'm here with Wolf, a tattoo artist I've known as long as I've been tattooing. Wolf, will you please introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Wolf. Yep.
What are your pronouns?
It's kind of a variety, I guess. It's like they, them is usually what I land on, but I'll go by she or it or whatever
Whatever
comes
works
out,
for you.
yeah. Whatever feels right.
What decade did you grow up in?
Ooh, well, I was born in 76, so I guess technically the 80s and 90s, I think, would be that where I grew up in.
Was it in SoCal, is that right?
Southern California until I was 18. And then I moved up to San Francisco Bay Area in 94 into the Mission District.
How come you moved at that point?
Honestly, I think if I had stayed in Ventura, I would have probably killed myself probably at that point. I was really depressed. I was really queer. I feel like just wanting to... Yeah, so I think I just moved up. I had some older kid friends that moved up, and I moved into their apartment, you know. I moved, I think just to get away from my family, to expand, you know what I'm saying? Like just to grow, to have more freedom, I think, in a lot of ways, to be queer.
And did you accomplish that by moving up here?
Yes. I am an Aquarian, and I know people say that Aquarians are very emotionless people, but it's actually, I would say the opposite is true. But I feel like I spent probably like the first month that I moved up here crying like every day. It was very different to move to San Francisco from my all Mexican neighborhood where I grew up with the same kids from kindergarten to this day. I know a lot of those people, but like there was all kinds of people in the Mission. I mean, it was like a lot of Mexican people, but there was a lot of queer people. There was like Asian people. There was like African American people. I didn't grow up with any of that, in the neighborhood I was in. It was all, first generation or immigrant Mexican families that were picking fruit. And that's like the people that I grew up with. We're American, but we were always like, the beaners in high school. We were always the Mexicans, even though if you were born here, it didn't matter. You're Mexican, you know what I'm saying.
Were you out as queer then in high school? Did you hide it?
I wasn't out as queer. I had really long hair. My hair is really white right now at this point in my life, but I had very black, long hair. And in high school, I think I've always known I was gay since kindergarten. But I feel like I came out to myself probably when I was 15 or 16. Like I started coming into that awareness that was like a different way to be. And I had like little gay boyfriends too. And but I think in that neighborhood, how I hid it was that I was, as they would call, whitewashed, and I was also into like, punk rock music. I was an artist in my neighborhood. That was really different, and I was only an only child as well.
Oh, you're an only child. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an only child too.
Yeah, and we also didn't go to the church, so we were really weird in our neighborhood. And so, I mean, my dad is very well loved and respected, I think, in our neighborhood where I grew up in, but the kids didn't fuck with me, but also they didn't play with me, if that makes sense. I was just a little bit different, a little bit of an odd person. And the kids that hung out with me were my cousins that I grew up with. And then just like a lot of like the like weird punk rock kids from high school, like little heshers and little metalheads that I accepted me as one of them, I guess. So I think my queerness actually, in a lot of ways, I think pushed me in a different direction, from if I had been like straight, girl or straight boy in that neighborhood. Because I think it was there's a lot of gang activity in our neighborhood, and we were very, I mean, I think at one point I had read something about our neighborhood being like the worst in Ventura. We were very infamous in our neighborhood. But it's like you grow up with these kids, and you're like, you're just that kid from down the street. You're a dumbass, or whatever. You're funny, or you're not a bad guy, or whatever. It's like we grew up together, and so you knew everybody. It wasn't like people were, I don't know. I think you get demonized in some ways, you know what I'm saying? And then you start believing it. And
or just some people, they don't have other options. They get mixed up. And I mean, I get it. That's...
Yeah, I mean, we were really isolated in that neighborhood. I mean, literally, this place was built by a river bottom, surrounded by orchards, literally across the train tracks, and there was like a dump on one side. And we would go play in the dump and look for shit down there,
It's like a trash dump.
Treasures, yeah. And, now that neighborhood sits in the middle of, tract housing. There's all those trees are gone. And so, like, when I go back there and I was like, yeah, I grew up down this street, and there was like a ditch on either side of this really narrow road, and you drive down there, and, it's not there anymore, like those things that I remember growing up as, and playing in the ditch before the bus, came down to pick you up, and, orchards where the guys would go running in there and grab lemons and throw them at you in the morning, or like clods of dirt and throw them at the girls in the morning, for fun. And loose dogs that would chase you home sometimes during the day, and just it was really chaotic. And I think being such a sensitive person, being that sensitive person, it was really traumatizing to grow up in that neighborhood for me, but also really interesting. A lot of interesting stories that happened there.
Was there a lot of tattoos in that neighborhood?
I feel like no. Not that you saw, unless you were involved in the gang that was there. And then there was stuff that people would do, and also kids, I remember the thing that kids at one point were doing were grabbing like the back of pencils with erasers and like rubbing their skin until it left a mark on their skin, and like the sign of the neighborhood, you know what I'm saying? And kids getting in trouble for that. So people were marking their skin and stuff, but it wasn't so prevalent. And if you did get tattoos in that time frame, it was because you were in a gang. It wasn't like, I never even thought in my reality that I would ever be a tattoo artist.
That's amazing.
Like, never.
So how did you transition to, at such a young age, becoming a tattoo artist? You've been tattooing how many years now?
Since I was 21, and I turned 47 in a couple days.
25 years.
It's kind of weird. When I was in high school, I remember, the journalism class like interviews people around campus to see who's who. And somebody did an interview with me, and I remember saying, and I think at that time I was just saying it to be like I'm so weird, and but I remember being like, I'm gonna move to San Francisco and shave my head and get tattooed, and I did it exactly that, and but I didn't get my first tattoo until I was like 21.
Do you remember what it was?
It was the word love
Mm-hmm.
in the middle of my back,
Mm-hmm.
which was quite different than how I actually felt at the time. And I got it by Leslie Ma, who had just finished her apprenticeship at Black and Blue. And
Is that how you met her for the first time?
That's how I met her. Mm-hmm. And that would be the place where I did my apprenticeship.
How did you end up having that apprenticeship? Was there a competition? Was it easy? Like, how did you end up?
It was easy. It was very serendipitous, actually. So in the 90s, Black and Blue Tattoo, which is in a different location now, started on 14th Street, and it was this little hole in the wall, and it was right across the street from this bar called Naps 2. And it was, back in the day, there was also these projects right there that were really horrible the way they had built them, and they actually redid them so they look like livable for people, and I remember that's where they had found a space basically in that area. And now I feel like that area is there's like nice businesses there and like lofts, and they built out some of the empty lots that were there. But right next door was a place called the Bearded Lady, and they would have art shows there. And I don't know how I got into this group art show, and I did one wall of my artwork, and then this other woman did the wall of the other side, and I had just a shit ton of giant ugly paintings of me like shooting myself or hanging myself or doing fucked up smearing. Like, my work looks so different now, right?
Yeah, I would say so.
Big expressive paintings and these little sculptures of aliens and weird stuff that I used to do in photographs. And I had an art show there. This other woman, I don't remember her name, and my two twin friends came up, I think from Ventura. I think they're still living there, and one of them got a tattoo that I think might have kind of fallen out, actually, and I don't even know who she got the tattoo by, but we had, between all of us, I think it was like $50 to get her this tattoo. And we went next door and she got a tattoo, but I remember asking the person at the time, was like, are you guys looking for apprentices? And I don't even know where that came from. You know what I'm saying? It was just like a moment.
Yeah.
And the person was like, actually, they're looking for apprentices. And I don't know at what point I came back or talked to them, but somehow I made it back. And that's when I met, I think it was Idexa and Natalie. And they were wanting to hire women or women of color and queer. And, at the time I fit all of those things, And so they were like, but you're 18, so we want you to come back when you're 21. We're going to have these two other people before you. So
why?
They had two apprentices before me. And there was this person named Sasha, who I think still tattoos, but does more like medical, I think, style tattooing, like Sasha
Dragonfly Tattoo, yes, or something. That person, I've heard of them. I don't know them. Okay.
Yeah, Sasha and this person named Sally. Mm-hmm. And Sally, I think, didn't end up making it through the apprenticeship, I believe. I'm not sure what happened with them. And then I came along.
What did you do in those 2-3 years that you were waiting to apprentice?
Well, I worked, basically, what happened was I was working at a grocery store. That was my first job in San Francisco. And then I went to work at a juice bar in the Castro. And then I used to really love bicycles. And I found like a bicycle at a thrift store, a little BMX bike that I was like trying to fix up. And I went into the bike shop, and this guy that worked there was like, "Do you work on bikes?" And I was like, "Not really, but I'm trying to build this bike, you know." And they're like, "Well, you should try out. You should try out here," because they were hiring. And it had never occurred to me to work on bicycles either. And they had me try out, and I went, and I managed to put the bike together somehow, but I didn't know how to tune it. So I literally didn't know how to do anything with the bike. But that's basically like, well, you got this on right ish, and so you're hired. They hired me, and they taught me how to build bikes out of a box, like new bikes out of a box. And so basically that began my 7-year stint at Valencia Cyclery in San Francisco. And I worked a couple years in the sales side, and that's where I learned how to build bikes. And at one point I was like, I want to learn how to be a mechanic. Like, I want to work in the repair shop. And they had, you know, more respect and more knowledge and more, yeah, I just want to learn how to work on bikes. And I basically told the guy, I was like, if I can't go over there, then I don't want to work here anymore. And they gave me a job over there. And I remember at the time there was this other guy that was pissed that I got the job and not him. And I remember him saying, they hired you because you're very persnickety. And I remember that was like one of the first times I had heard that word.
What the hell does that mean?
Persnickety, I think it just means that you're very meticulous about things. And at the time I took it very offensively, and over the years I've grown to embody that. You know what I'm saying? I think I am very persnickety.
Now I need to look this word up. Hold on, people listening. We're going to find out the official definition of persnickety. Placing too much emphasis on trivial or minor details, fussy. Example, she's very persnickety about her food, requiring a particularly precise or careful approach. Example, it's hard to find a film more persnickety and difficult to use than black and white infrared.
So
okay.
You should have some knowledge on black and white infrared film if you want to know the definition of that.
That's interesting. Detail orient. I would, that's such a specific word. I feel like you are very detail oriented, and that's a wonderful thing. Is how you're so technically proficient at tattooing.
You have to be kind of persnickety to be a mechanic, because you have to start, A, B, C, I
mean, same with tattooing, right? You have to be fussy about details to get it right. Like how you set up your machine, how you apply the stencil, how you...
Cleanliness, dealing with the client, how they're doing, feeling it out, not rubbing your face with your hand, you know what I'm saying?
Right, not touching things with your dirty gloves, for sure. So you were there for 7 years?
I was there for 7 years.
So you were doing it at the same time as your apprenticeship?
At one point I was doing it at the same time. And it was interesting because I worked with a couple girls or women at the time at the bike shop, but eventually I was the only woman at the time there. I've always identified as a dyke, and now it's kind of a non-binary sort of situation for me. But when I went to Black and Blue, is the opposite. It was working with all women at the time is how we identified, or dykes or whatever. And I found it quite similar, to be honest. Like, some people say, like, oh, it's like this or like that. I think there's just different forms of hazing that that people have in general, maybe. But I don't know. It was kind of nice to have the balance of both. But I basically worked at both of those places for 7 years, 7 days a week straight. Like, I didn't have any days off. And essentially I learned 2 trades at the same time. So I learned the trade of being a bike mechanic and learning how to tattoo.
And you were married at some point in that time frame, right? You were with your ex-partner for quite a while.
10 years, yeah.
So how did that come into play? You were so busy 7 days a week working in 2 different trades, learning 2 different arts.
The when I was with my ex, I was actually already over here at
A diving swallow.
Diving
Okay.
Swallow, and it worked fine. My ex worked at a restaurant in the city, and at some point we came together. During
Did you
the
meet her through
day.
tattooing?
I did actually, and that's for me. I think I see that kind of as a big no-no for me to
Mm.
date people that you're tattooing. Um, I had been with somebody I was in a really intense relationship with, and I feel like it was pretty toxic for both of us. I learned a lot, definitely from them, and I broke up with him. It was really intense, and I feel like within that time frame, I had been tattooing my ex that I was married to for 10 years, and I finished the tattoo that I did on them, and that's sort of when we began like dating officially, basically. And yeah, it just we worked together for 10 years, and it went by very quickly. Like I think it was very I don't know, like it was very easy in a lot of ways, and it was very difficult in other ways. I think towards the end for me, you know. Um, it worked out fine, like work wise. Like we always had some days together and some days off, and we traveled a lot and we ate a lot of interesting things. I think because she worked in the restaurant industry, so we did a lot of exploring with food, and I learned a lot about stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And traveling too. Like I never ever thought that I would travel. Being from the neighborhood that I grew up in, would I ever have thought I would go anywhere, in my life? Like that was just not a thing that I
That's not
was
part of
told that
your
I could do. Yeah.
reality. Makes
Mm-hmm.
sense.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go back for a second to the dating clients thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember, I was single for most of my apprenticeship, and there was somebody I was tattooing, and I was like, she's really cute, saying it to somebody else, and the artist was like, you never want to date people you tattoo because, morning after morning, you're going to wake up next to a tattoo and go, I was shitty then, and this tattoo is a piece of shit. And she was like, you never want to do that for that reason. I was like, okay, fine. I mean, in retrospect, she's right, of course, because I look at my partner's arm and I go, I probably could have done that better, maybe.
Yeah.
I'd have done it now and not 4 or 5 years ago.
Uh-huh.
It's fine. Her tattoo's fine.
Well, I mean, first of all, I think tattooing somebody that you're dating or that you're with is hard, because I feel like there's like this sort of kind of like barrier that you have between you and your clients, like a professional barrier where it's like you can feel them but relate to them, but also be like, okay, no, you can't move right now, or no, you can't do that, you have to stay really still, or you either kind of are nice to them and try to get them to sit still. You're like, no, you can't do you can't do that. Right now you can't move.
Yeah.
Or take a deep breath. Okay, I'm going to do a 1, 2, 3 line, and then I'm going to stop. 1, 2, 3 line. And I think that when you're with somebody, all of their little fissures and cracks and things, and
well, they like respect you less in the way that a client does. Yes. You're right. They will have the little fits or whatever. They will. It's so true. It's but then of course at the same time, if you're dating somebody who's interested in getting tattooed, how are you going to say no?
Yeah, and I definitely have tattooed people that I've dated, and in some cases it's been really great, and I've gotten to do some really awesome pieces that I wouldn't have otherwise have gotten a chance to do. But in other cases, it's intense, to tattoo people that you're with. And my ex, for instance, used to love to sit in the sun, and I'd be like, hey, like that's really bad for your tattoos. That orange is going to fade, and lo and behold, it fades, and then you have to do it again, and you're like, okay, well now I have to take a day to do this, and it makes you feel kind of like, the fuck, like just put some sunblock on that.
Right, put some sunscreen on that. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but I think for me too, and this is kind of, I don't feel like, I don't know, I feel like I don't feel like attraction to people, just, how should I say? I definitely would consider myself like demi. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like I have to form some kind of attachment to a person, to form an attraction to a person, and so getting to know people definitely over many sessions is what led me to even consider dating this person after having a hard relationship prior to, you know.
Yeah, I mean that's why it's not like yes, for therapists and for medical professionals, there's a lot more boundaries than for
Mm-hmm.
us. Like we don't have the regulations they do,
Mm-hmm.
but also our work is a lot more intimate than their
Mm-hmm.
work,
Yeah.
right? Even if they're doing therapy, there's just a different intimacy with working with the body. And so
Yes.
I would not ever, blame anybody for dating somebody they've tattooed because, like, how else are you supposed to meet people? How are you
Mm-hmm.
supposed to get to know people?
Yeah.
And I have one ex that I tattooed, and that's how we got to know each other.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was like a year and a half,
Mm-hmm.
of that time frame. So it wasn't immediate. And I think that's, you have to be careful. You have to know your lines. You have to be careful not to create a bad memory for that person you just tattooed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I think it's fine, when it feels right
Yeah.
to date the people you
Yeah.
tattoo.
And and I've had quite the opposite too. Where I've had people that really want to be my friends. I had a person that was writing me these long letters after I had tattooed them about wanting to be my friend and all this really intense information that I was like, I don't need to know that about you. Like, you can literally start by just talking to me during the tattoo, but no words were said. So I didn't feel any connection to the person other than I'm going to do a good job on you.
Mm-hmm.
And then they came back for a second tattoo, and same, like it was just like we did it. It was a tattoo, that was it.
Yeah.
It was, you gave me the image, I did the image, we did it, and then there was just these letters and letters and letters, and then I had to tell them I wouldn't tattoo them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to be their friend. Thank you. Like, I try not to cross that boundary. I'm also a very private person. I don't want you to know where I live, or you know what I'm saying. And it had a little bit of a stalkery kind of feeling to me, and I had to block them from all my social media, and everybody at work blocked them too. And I had another guy too that was really into me, and I was like, dude, I'm just tattooing you, and I'm queer. I don't date cis guys, and um, so there's that other aspect of people are too familiar sometimes with you. People bring me food a lot, and that's nice, but if I don't know you, at least a couple tattoos in or something, it's like really hard for me to take something, from people. I had a guy that came just for a consult, and he just dropped by. It wasn't even like we had an appointment.
He just like stopped by,
and then he stopped by, and he had 2 coffees, and I didn't let him in because we didn't have an appointment, and I didn't want the coffee. And I think in society it's kind of like, take the coffee, make him feel all right. And I was like, I don't know you, dude.
Yeah.
And you're crossing my boundaries, one, because you're just showing up. I don't know you. You could be a crazy person wanting to shoot everybody in the store.
Or put poison in my coffee. I mean,
Like, I don't know you. But it's just, and it made me feel bad that I was like, dude, come back tomorrow. Did we have an appointment? No. Okay, do you want the coffee? No. No, thank you. I had one already. You know what I'm saying?
Way to have good intuition. I mean, that's so important, with this kind of work.
But it's just like, sometimes, I don't know. It's like I don't know. Everybody has such a different way of communicating, and it's always our job to kind of figure out how to communicate with people. And then there's people that obviously they just communicate in a very different way than you would, or sometimes I have a very flat affect with people, and people expect me to be very warm right away, or be very performative of queerness for them right away. And I feel like I'm a nice person. I feel like I can be warm. I feel like I can take you to a really dark hole and pull you back out during tattooing. Like, that's part of it sometimes. Sometimes it's just very silly and not like that. And other times it's very like, let's go into that hole together and let's talk about really intense things and stuff. But I don't just give that to you if you just come in for a consult. And unfortunately, people I've had bad situations with people that don't want to get tattooed by me because I didn't, perform queerness for them right away, or was warm, or was trying to get the details worked out first. And it's hard sometimes to know how to be, It's hard to read people sometimes, It's hard to, I don't know, be friendly but have boundaries. Like,
It is
you know what I'm
hard.
saying?
I feel like the culture and the bedside manner culture moved from being completely nothing's expected to being everything's expected, right? There's a sweet person I know who's a tattoo artist who opened a shop, and she has sandwiches and she has tea service and she has, it's gorgeous. Her shop is gorgeous. And I'm like, should I be doing that? Should I be having cheese plates and grapes and all that, for my clients? It's like, no, 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 that's not me. I don't think that would. But you know what I mean? It went from being like, you just come in, you lay down, you shut the fuck up, you get tattooed, to being like, here's a sandwich and some tea, and here's a.
I think Diving Swallow, I think, too, was like that. I feel like the fact that we had tea was a really big thing. Or at Black and Blue, we had always a jar of suckers that's working for them, and they have the time and the mental capacity to do that. At our shop, we're working with 10 to 13 coworkers sometimes, not all at the same time, but different people, different, I don't know, issues around different things, COVID, I think, too, just changed the reality. Like, we got rid of the teapot. Nobody takes their masks off,
Yeah.
You can't have this or that in the area where you work, So everybody's different, and that's the thing, is like, there's different cultures at different shops, and it's all fine, Customers will go to those places, and
It's not just, make a judgment on what people expect, but that it went from nothing was expected to everything being expected. And it sort of follows our cultural story in general about how to treat people and make them feel like royalty. And that sometimes works, sometimes doesn't, right?
Yeah. It's a really hard job. I think you had said in one of your episodes that it's many skills that it takes to become a tattoo artist, or to be a tattoo artist, not to become a tattoo artist, to be and remain a tattoo artist. There's a lot of skills. I feel like, a lot of times we're part witch doctor, part
therapist.
Yeah. Like, you're doing these rituals for people that you weren't trained on, trying to be super clean about something, being super technical or not technical, or, and there are definitely, like, other artists these days that will specialize in particular styles, or they want to do something very sacred, and that's their whole purpose in tattooing, and that's not how I was, taught to tattoo. I was basically taught in a shop that, was, I think, modeled themselves after a walk-in shop, but the fact that we were a queer owned and operated shop in the Mission in the 90s, I don't know, like, we had to know how to do a little bit of everything, and if you're an apprentice, well, one day when I worked there, they sent me some squares that nobody wanted to do, a fucking dolphin that nobody wanted to do, a flower, and a fucking rainbow. All in one day.
What do you mean nobody wanted to do them? Like, other people in the shop didn't want to do them?
That
Okay.
were more like the senior artists didn't want to do
We're like,
that.
I don't want this dolphin, go to the apprentice.
Go to the apprentice. And so then I have to figure out how to do a fucking dolphin, what kind of flower, and so I think, having entered the industry too at such a young age, like, I feel like I struggle now to find sort of my voice and what my style is in tattooing. But the other side of that, and also being a mechanic for so long, I think has kind of helped me to be able to show people how to do a thing, or like, oh, you're, if this tube is stuck in your machine, or if this is happening to this, like, try this, like, I feel like, having had a lot of experiences doing a lot of different stuff, working with bikes and these machines, what I'm saying, help me, I don't know, almost intuitively do little things to it or have this crossover with from being a mechanic to being a tattoo artist or.
But so this dolphin, for example, this was before Google Images, correct? You couldn't just Google image, what does a dolphin look like? Okay, it looks like this, I'll draw for this photograph of this dolphin. So did you just have to know how to draw a dolphin?
Well,
what did you do?
I think yes, but also books. I mean,
you had books of animals.
We had so many books at the shop, so many books. I had tons and tons of books, and that was one of those things you just wrote off at the end of the year. Books.
For sure, but what if you didn't have a book that had the thing?
Then you have to figure
out how to draw it.
I mean, there was, I think when we were at the place on 16th, I think we already had a computer at that point. So we were on the computer a lot too, doing stuff like that with the computer.
Yeah,
there was always something, and there was always Flash. We had Flash in the shop too.
I mean, when I started Black and Blue, there was still Flash on the wall. We took it down like probably in the first year or two of me being there, but it was still there. I still got to do a couple pieces of literal Flash off the wall.
Well, my coworker was the one that put every single piece of what's it called? Velcro.
Yeah.
On that. That was her apprenticeship project.
And then that's the same sheets that traveled to the new location?
Yes.
Nice.
I remember when
those
they bought them.
Those huge things on the wall. Yeah, on that front wall.
When they bought them, and people would come in and sell you sheets of Flash. Artists would come by with their Flash, and you would buy it or not.
Fascinating.
We had to come up with a set of Flash for the shop at the end of our apprenticeship. That was the thing. I have my Flash still. It's kind of good, but really hideous.
No one made me do any Flash ever.
Yeah, we did Flash. So, it's just changed. I work with tracing paper up until a few years ago, carrying rolls and having those Prisma-colored, pencils that fell off the back of a truck. You know what I'm saying?
Well, what you don't do that now?
No, I use my iPad pretty much exclusively, and it's really made my life a lot easier. So I don't have files and files and files of papers. I don't have to buy cartridges and cartridges of ink for my home copier. I don't have a computer. Like, I use my iPad basically for everything. And I draw. I mean, you have your references there. You can send it to the printer. You can carry this up to wherever the fuck you're going. It's I don't know. I feel like I've paid my dues with the tracing paper. And if I'm going to do something on an arm, like I take a photograph of the person's arm, draw on the iPad, superimposed over the arm and stuff, and then if something needs to be altered, like I'll draw on the person or change it a little bit. But even just those little changes that you don't have to retrace the whole thing just to get that one little change or flip the image around or whatever, it's made a big difference for me. I miss the feel of paper. I like the warmth that the image has, but I feel like I like technology. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like I've had to evolve over and over and over and over in this industry. It's like we used to do tribal armbands. That was a no-no at some point, and it became black work. You used to do Japanese style work. You did kanji on people. You did whatever the fuck people wanted to because they didn't want other people to read it. You did a thing that only was for them. You know what I'm saying? And then
the ironic thing is if they get a thing that is just for them that people can't read, people ask you all day long, what does that mean?
I don't know. I don't know what that says. Do you know what that says? We don't do that anymore. You're not an Asian person. You're not is that your tribe? Or is that we have learned through. I'm Mexican, you know what I'm saying? You'd think that I would know something, and no, it's like I fucking learned with everybody else that this is a no-no. You don't do that, and I'm still learning, and I think that's great. But
it's ever evolving, and it's also sometimes there's not a clear line. People ask for something that's their spirit animal, quotation marks, right? And you're like, well, you're not native, so it's not your spirit animal, but okay, you wanna, I don't know, a fox or something that you feel really connected to. Okay, animals are universal, but I
Mm-hmm.
just can't really hear you say to me that you want a spirit animal, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
there's not always a line
Mm-hmm.
that's really clearly demarcated. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I'm still very much learning
Yeah.
to.
And I've also had people that want to work with me exclusively because I'm a person of color or queer or whatever, and I find that some of those people have been so disrespectful. They don't actually want to pay you
Mm-hmm.
your what you've asked for. You know what I'm saying? And I've had a lot of hard time with a lot of different things with that. So I don't know. It's a
What's your ideal client? If you could
um,
conjure up in your minds an ideal client with the ideal project.
um, not so much like an image per se. Like I don't draw people. I will not do any phoenixes on people. I absolutely will not draw those birds for anybody anymore.
You do too many or what?
Yes, I too many, and too many, and I feel like every time I talk about them, they start coming back. So I try not to talk about even those birds. They're impossible to draw. It's like, what do you draw from in nature? It's like you're either taking them from, Japanese culture, how they draw them, or Japanese tattoo. I don't do any work like that.
Look into Russian work. There's a lot of phoenix imagery in Russian folklore.
Sure, but then it's like, I'm not Russian either, right?
Yeah, but Russians are white and not oppressed, clearly, so it's fine.
But then it's like also like, do we take it from like a turkey, like a peacock, like I don't know. People don't like bird feet. You know what I'm saying? Like I've drawn fucking phoenixes over and over and over and over. And then I had heard this story one time that like the universe doesn't hear any negative stuff, and I'd be like, fucking phoenix, like I'm drawing another fucking phoenix. I hate phoenixes. But really all the universe is hearing is like, phoenix,
Give me a phoenix.
Phoenix.
Okay, so you want a client who does not ask for a phoenix.
A client that does not ask for a phoenix. It's interesting. I like doing memorial tattoos. I I like doing imagery of animals a lot. I like plants. Fine. There's some plants that are really not tattooable, but I like plants a lot.
What makes a plant untattooable?
I think some of them are just really detailed. For me, the way my fucking rigid ass brain thinks. It's like, do not bring me dandelions into tattoo. Um, so I don't know. Like I feel like a good tattoo for me is more becoming about like the rapport you have with people, like the being able to enter kind of like a flow state when you're tattooing somebody. There's a little bit of talking involved, but then they'll leave you alone for a little bit and you go into it like this. I used to talk a lot to people when I was tattooing them, and I don't as much anymore.
Would you want a lot of freedom in the design? Do you like a client who says to you, here's kind of roundabout what I want, but you just do whatever you want with that?
I think what I find works for me is like the clearer the idea is, the easier I can draw it, I guess. You know what I'm saying? So I don't tend to do a lot of background stuff with my tattoos. They're very, I don't know, maybe it's just the way that my brain works, but I don't tend to do a lot of stuff that's very theoretical. I don't know if that would be a word, Leah,
Abstract.
abstract, mushy, soft cloud shapes, space scenes. Like I'm very much like a concrete.
Like bold, concrete.
Yeah. There's not a lot of like light sources happening and cool. It's like I understand color theory, but I don't need a lot of that. I just don't think that way. It's just not the way that my brain thinks.
So kind of illustrative, realistic,
Kind of,
bold.
yeah. So, yeah. And I guess
How long of a sit do you like to do? What's your ideal sit time?
Ideal sit time, a lot of times I like to do just an outline on people and let people go home if it's something big. If it's something little, we can do it in one sitting, but for me, for some reason, going from a black outline to now doing full color is a very different feeling. And so sometimes I feel like I need to work myself up to that in a way, or pre-plan it in my head, or start visualizing it before the person comes in.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you're doing like a portrait of a rose, for instance, you can work from references. But if you're doing, like, I don't know, like if somebody was like, I want like a portrait of my dog with like some poppies on the bottom and some lavender situation happening. I want to be able to work it out either on, the iPad beforehand, or if it's stippling, a lot of times I'll stipple the whole thing on a piece of paper, whatever, the iPad, before I do it on people. Like, I want to see what it looks like, and I want to be able to have the space to, like, figure that out. I don't know. Like, I problem solve, I think, a lot in tattooing, I guess. Yeah.
So somebody who's patient and
Yeah.
is fine with not having like 6 hours at a time.
Yes, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't usually work that long on people.
Yeah.
3 hours, I think, is a good session for most people, anyways, before they start to kind of pull away from you or need a lot of breaks, or so. I don't have like a half day, full day situation that I work with people. It's usually like, let's do 3 hours, see how you feel. So one of the innovations that happened at Diving Swallow is that I moved my station downstairs, and we put in a sink. Because originally we were like, let's split the bottom of the shop, let's find a way to make money, let's get a yarn store. It was Marie's idea to split the shop with us, and we'll work upstairs. And I remember talking to Shannon, my ex, and she's like, why are you opening a yarn store in your tattoo parlor? Why would you do that? Don't you have more stations downstairs? And so I moved my station downstairs, and that's what created a space for other artists to guest or to hire another artist. And that's where we are now. Mm-hmm. We built another sink downstairs. We have 2 stations, and then we have like 5 stations upstairs. Mm-hmm. And we've had, guests come from all over the place. And I think the first year that we ever made a profit was the year before COVID. And now that's done. Like, so now it's just the same. We're at the beginning again. It's a labor of love.
It's I think it's something that we don't talk about, because I think people come to us and they're like, oh, you charge how much per hour? It's, 150, 200, 300, 400 an hour. Mm-hmm. The reality is, when you're self-employed, there's really almost no amount of money you can charge to feel cush. There's no, it's not really a thing, because there's so many costs with running your own business.
Well, and also there's a lot of politics between running a business, right? Because then it becomes about, what is it, the word, but you want to give opportunities to people of color, disabled people, women to tattoo, but then you're making money off of them. You know what I'm saying? And I've had a really big struggle with that. I've taught 3 people to tattoo, essentially. You know what I'm saying? I feel like there's always learning that's going to not happen, and learning that's going to happen.
You're giving a person a fish, not teaching them how to fish. That piece. Yeah.
Or I've tried to teach people how to fish.
Yeah.
And who knows if that, maybe they turn vegan at some point. Who knows? You know what I'm saying? But, and also on top of that, I'm a Gen Xer. I have a different attitude about work. I'm a Gen Xer. I have a different attitude about like self-care. You know what I'm saying? That's changed over the years. But, I am a different generation. Mm-hmm. And for good or for bad, I feel like I've had to learn a lot about lots of things, and then try to navigate, politics and what it is to, we supply our artists with all of the stuff, inks, just all of this paper stuff, all of the whatever, everything. All they have to do is bring their machines in and their needles, essentially. And on top of that, we started doing all compostable stuff. On top of that, gloves are now, $30 a box instead of 10 or 15.
For real.
you know,
Yeah.
and they're compostable too.
Oh, your gloves are compostable.
Yes.
I haven't switched to those yet.
Yeah. So 5 years in the environment versus 1,000 years, you know. But you know, but then on top of that, it's like, you know, we're charging people for their spot, you know. All of that money goes into buying supplies and everything, but it still has the, I think for me, I just haven't been able to marry those two feelings, you know, of like trying to run a shop, trying not to. I wish I could remember the word, but it's like, you know, charging people for the spot. I wish everything could be free, you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
sure.
But I just
Yeah.
don't know how that would work.
It's not
You
the
know?
world we live in.
What's that?
It's not the world we live in.
It's not, but I
If you could
feel like
trade
there's
that
that
shit.
feeling that it should be, and I would like it, especially being a futuristic thinker. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know how to do that.
Well, you can't do it on your own, right? You can't trade for rent or for food.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe in some other society you could do that,
Mm-hmm.
but in this society you can't.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to make that money so you can pay your bills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Healthcare. I mean, the things we have to pay for in this country.
Mm-hmm. It's just shitty, I guess. But so, you know, there's just and I feel like the pandemics that kind of exacerbated a lot of that stuff as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because things are more expensive now, and people want to learn to tattoo, and it's always like a lot of people come in and they're very starry-eyed about wanting to learn how to tattoo, and but you can't teach people in the way that we used to teach people, or I was taught, and not in a negative way, but there's not a whole lot to teach people, right? Now it's like mostly rotaries. Most people use black ink. We don't do a lot of color anymore with some artists. I don't know. It's just a very different environment. You don't have autoclave in a lot of shops, ultrasound machine. You're not doing spore tests. I used to break needles off of bars and clean the solder off needles off like thousands of bars. Give them to this person. She would put the needles back on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I thought that was like a thing. I never learned how to make needles. I think maybe Zeph one time sat with me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Sasha sat with me. You know, with some stuff, but I don't have those skills to teach.
And you
the
don't
new
need
generation.
to.
And what do I
Yeah.
teach them? They just need an opportunity
Yeah.
to be taken seriously. And so you give somebody an opportunity, and you know, I had a person come in that didn't even like say anything. They started working at a different shop and barely said bye. Barely returned the keys. We were like, "Can you please bring the keys back? It's
Mm-hmm.
okay if you want to work at a different shop. That's not the point, but just say like, thanks for the opportunity, or see you later."
That was somebody that you guys taught?
Yeah.
Wow.
We didn't teach this person, but we let them hang out at the shop, and then we gave them a job.
Yeah.
But just something. Like, I don't really care. It's not a money thing ultimately, you know what I'm saying? Because we're not fucking making any money. You know what I'm saying? I make the money that I work for.
Yeah.
But, you know, just some acknowledgement that there was something. I don't know. It just felt a little weird.
Yeah.
You know. So
I think that's the thing, you know, that I've never had an apprentice, right? So the idea of having one, like, that's what I want to teach them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they have to be the right kind of human first. Like, they have to have that appreciation and that, you know, love for humanity in some level, because I don't think that you can successfully do this without having that. You have to appreciate people somewhat, right? But teach them that shit. Like, you gotta have respect. You gotta follow through. You gotta know that people notice how you affect them, and it matters how you act. And
what is that? You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I understand that, and that's in reality like a skill that your parents should have shown you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this is also one of the struggles that I've had with apprentices is like, dude, like, you can't do that right now, you know, or like maybe, you know, I don't know, like, I feel like we're also not parents, but you have these really young queer kids wanting to belong to something, or wanting to be doing something that's an alternative culture, and you are this sort of parent figure for them, but you're not their parent. You know what I'm saying? And I don't want to be a parent, but somehow I've been that person. And that's part of the things of working in you're a shop owner, you're telling people how to do things or don't do that or whatever, but you're not their parent. There's just so many fucking things that you have to balance out. You know what I'm saying?
But yeah, it's not. Yeah, that's why I haven't done it yet. I just haven't found the right approach or the right person or something.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, for me, like, teaching has been the part of tattooing that I've loved the most, because I love giving people information. Like, I love seeing people's eyes, like, wow, I didn't realize if I just did that little thing or blah blah blah, like, or I don't know, put another rubber band on this thing, or, you know what I'm saying, that would make such a big difference. And I love that. And I struggled through all of those little things and learned how to do these little tricks, and I like being able to show you that, or that person that. But I think what has worked for me better is to have people approach me organically that I work with, that are like, can I watch you for a minute, or can I do this? And then it feels like a treat or like a gift, and it's not like this loaded exchange of like, how much are you teaching me? You weren't there. And I'm like, well, you don't fucking like sit down with me. I'm asking you to sit here, or I'm telling you this is, sit down, watch. But then it's like the apprenticeship is over, and that's when your learning begins, right? Because that's when you have to apply what I was trying to teach you, and now you want to sit. And so now it's like a couple years, you know what I'm saying, that we're doing this. But I don't know. I feel like sometimes for me, and I used to do this a lot at Black and Blue with a lot of the apprentices there, would be like, look at this, or try this, or what are you doing? You know what I'm saying? And I'm, I don't know, it worked always better for me to work more organically like that,
I mean, I was so thankful last year when you showed me, the rotary, how to set it up and all that. Like, I have one, I'm using it, but working on my own, there's very little opportunity to learn something new, right? It's just whatever I can think up, or like, I'm not looking to YouTube for that.
Shit, I'll look at YouTube. I'll look at I'll look at whatever.
I've wanted to learn to work on machines my whole career, because yes, I wasn't taught that in my apprenticeship, and I have done a tiny bit, but not enough. And I have all these machines laying around that could use a tune-up, but you need time and effort, and maybe a friend to do that with.
I could tune up a machine, but I can't change the springs on it. So,
and you probably could if you probably could if you were like sitting messing with it for a while.
I probably could.
Yeah.
I probably could. Having sort of a background in being a mechanic has helped me to be able to think that way, but access to that knowledge is not something that I have. That's the problem. It's like, how hard can it be to wind a coil? You know what I'm saying?
It's practice, I'm sure. Just getting it nice and even. Yeah, nice tension.
How hard can it be? I mean,
it's probably not very hard.
And I feel like that's all, I don't know, that's kind of how it's been, with the tattoo industry. And I feel very proud of queer culture in the tattoo industry, because we have our own culture within the tattoo industry, because a lot of times we weren't taught by these guys that had access to this knowledge or these machines or whatever. So we kind of just figured other stuff out, or and that's also what I loved about like the new generation of tattoo artists that I started seeing like a few years ago, where we're not depending on these conventions to invite us to have a booth at their convention and then to be treated like shit while we're there. It's like, no, they're searching out shops that feel safe to them and traveling with their stuff. They have followings because of their way on social media, and they've created a new culture within tattooing that I think is really amazing. And it's easy to travel with one bottle of ink, you know what I'm saying? And I love doing color, and I would like to see more color in this, industry from younger artists, but at the same time, I also get it. It's like,
It's not cool right now.
yeah, you buy one
Trends.
bottle of black ink and
being queer is that part of the reason why we love tattoos is because there's this protective shield around us. We're like, don't fuck with me, I'm tough, right? That's a part of it. Like, the world is dangerous.
I feel like that's also youth. And the work will look dated at some point. It's the fine line stuff, I think, is going to look really intense at some point. I've already seen some of my stippled stuff that I've done recently and how it fades together. Same with when we did quote unquote the tribal armbands of the 90s. You know what I'm saying? It's very dated. The stuff that people were doing in the 70s, you can tell was done in a certain time frame.
For sure.
Everybody gets their chance in the sun.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So I think it's just, and there's always going to be innovation in this work. You know what I'm saying? We're not the end all be all, and neither is the new generation.
For sure.
And that's fine. That's good. That's progress.
The ink quality is changing too.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe it'll go the way of Europe, where all of the inks will get banned, all the coloring inks.
Right. I think it's coming. As Hannah Wolf said, that she sees these trends come from there to here, and I mean, I appreciate her tip of like buy the inks that are sold in Europe as well, because those companies will be the more stringent on their practices.
Yeah.
Chemical safety.
Yeah. I know my friend in Italy has had to start using different inks because of that. But a lot of tattoo artists, again, are using only black, and so some of them are fine, and some of them are doing like color tattoos. It's harder to, and at the same time, it's like then they're going to be able to control like how much they're charging for it, because this is the only place that makes that ink or whatever. And so unless more companies clue in on it or something, I don't know how that works, but yeah, I don't know. The tattoo industry is interesting. It's definitely always interesting.
I think it's what keeps us going. For you, like 25 years in, right? The changes is what makes it alive. If it was all the same as it was 25 years ago.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I think that's another quality that you have to have as an artist, is to be able to go with the flow and change yourself, as well, and learn from younger people, in terms of how they want to be addressed, or learn in terms of I don't know, like a lot of stuff, around trauma informed, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of that stuff, I think we kind of learned as we went, because that wasn't like a thing, you know what I'm saying? Now I'm always, not now, I feel like I've always done this, but I feel like I'm aware of like, okay, I'm gonna go like this, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna touch you here, I'm gonna do this, and how are you feeling? You can just say stop. If it hurts and you don't want me to keep going, just say stop, and I'll stop. And some of that stuff we have had to learn organically, and in this generation, like, it's like more out in the front, like, this is how we treat people. And I think that's great.
Yes, it's back to what we were talking about with the bedside manner changing, what's expected is changing. But yeah, for sure, also the amount of stories I heard when I was starting out of young women coming to me and saying, I have this half-finished tattoo, I was sitting with this guy who was inappropriate, who touched me, who made me feel really unsafe, I will never go back to him, can you please finish it, right? You hear these stories, you never want to be that person, even inadvertently, who makes somebody feel that way.
Yeah. And that's also something, too, that I find, when I worked at Black and Blue, I remember they would send us, I don't know what specific shop, but I remember this person came in and they wanted to work with us because this guy's shop wouldn't work with him because he had AIDS. And maybe Hep C as well. And they're like, well, we have families, so we don't want to work on you, but go work at the Dyke shop, or go work with the Dyke shop. And I feel like, yes, actually we do have a lot of information in our world about safe sex, about how using gloves, like having been the people that took care of each other during like the AIDS epidemic. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We do have a lot of things that we pull from like the SM community about consent. That's always been a thing. And I'm not saying in all circles, but in queer culture in general, I feel like that's always been a thing.
But being taught, my apprenticeship was, I was taught that everybody walking in might be HIV positive, might have Hep C. So you should be as careful as if they do.
Yeah.
And take the precautions. If you poke yourself, here's what you do. And there was so much more awareness there in that way, where I never felt like I would say no to somebody because of their health status, right?
But we would get sent people.
That's so intense.
You know what I'm saying? And then you had to take a step back and think about it on so many levels. And I don't know. I feel really thankful to have kind of grown up in the queer community. I don't think I ran into a lot of the issues that maybe some other artists or younger artists have talked about, where it's like they were trying to find a place to work and nobody would hire them. Somehow I was just at the right place at the right time. And then I was instilled with certain values at that shop. For me, I do feel like Black and Blue has a legacy in me, going to a different shop, starting being in a business, trying to pass on the skills to other people as best I can, because definitely not perfect, and giving another person an opportunity, you know what I'm saying, or two or three, whatever it is, you know what I'm saying.
I mean, I appreciated what you said about you feeling like, even as a brown queer person, you felt like you were in the right place at the right time. Like, I want that for people, right? I don't want people to struggle. So to find that opportunity, I'm so glad to hear that you felt like that part was easy, because so many other things weren't, right?
Yeah.
Well, you were saying when Black and Blue, being part of Black and Blue back in those early days, there was a lot of hate coming from the outside. Where was that coming from? From just randos or other tattoo artists? Or
I mean, we would get crank calls all the time about like, do you do dick? Do you, I don't know, like just a lot of weird energy. I went to I think a couple conventions with the shop and as an apprentice, and we would show up and people were not nice. Like they wouldn't say hi to you. They're very suspicious.
Other tattooists or clients?
Other tattooists. Clients come by your shop because they're curious.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But we're the Dyke shop. And then, over the weekend, people would ease up and then start chatting with you. But it's always kind of met with this like suspicion. Like, what do you do? And then also being in that environment of the convention, you would have, all sorts of people. You'd have Nazis in there. You'd have like, racist biker dudes, punk rockers. It was such a weird mix of people in the same space, I don't know. Going, like, I remember I was dating somebody at the time who was getting these huge pieces on each leg by a really famous tattoo artist in the city, and being like, oh, I'm just starting to tattoo, and just like no warmth, no information, no nothing, it's like, and they were brilliant artists. They still tattoo. They have a shop still in the city, but
a man.
Yeah, but it's like I don't know. All of the information, everything that I've learned, a lot of it I just kind of figured out by myself. Like I had the space of Black and Blue to learn, but then it's like if I want to learn how to do gray shading, maybe somebody would let out some little piece of information that I could build on.
Yeah.
But I started tattooing with like tight threes, lining a back piece with a tight 3.
Yeah.
Filling it in with a 7 mag.
Right.
Insane.
Right. Absolutely. But that is something that, when I was starting out, I would ask, like, well, how do you, I remember this sort of piece of wisdom, like you pay someone to tattoo you, you go sit with them, you ask them questions. That's how it's done, right? Like you have an apprenticeship, but you can also gain knowledge from other people. You sit with them, you pay respect to them, and they'll tell you. You ask them questions. And I tried that. Nothing. I got nothing, went and sat with some guy in LA, traveled to see him, got a big piece from him, gave him all the freedom to design. I'd be like, what kind of ink do you use? Oh, different inks. What kind of needles? Oh, whatever. Just every question I asked was met with a couple words. He was just, he treated me like I was literally a piece of skin with a wallet attached to it. I felt like it was so strange, but maybe it's like being a young woman, a perceived person. Maybe that was that. But yeah, the tattoo industry, the people who came before us, are not many people have ever given me the time of day to answer questions or to help me in any way.
And it's a balance. I feel like sometimes too, if you give too much information to people, I don't know if that's also appreciated either. So I think it's like a balance somewhere in there.
It's like short of giving an apprenticeship, because that's hard, right? Like I will tell whatever somebody asks me a question, I'll answer the fucking question fully, with detail.
I've had people, come in and sit with me multiple days. You know what I'm saying? I've had people bring in like shitty ass machines that they were working on and tune them up, put a needle in the machine, like this is your cord that goes here, clean the tips of this thing. You know what I'm saying? Like,
what's beyond the basics, but if you had a person who's starting tattoo come and get a tattoo from you, and they said to you, what type of ink do you use and why do you use that grouping, and you'd probably tell them, you would say, this makes a nice line, this black is really black, and this is what I use for lining, this is what I use for, right? There's a line there.
Well, sure. Yeah. I mean, what does it cost you? Nothing to give that person information.
But why did they not give us any fucking help, right? And even though that was the
I don't know what the problem is. For me too, I never had money to go get tattooed. I to this day, I've gotten some tattoos, but it's like I've always paid for all my tattoos. So that means that I don't have a lot of tattoos on my body. And I don't have there are a lot of tattoos by coworkers. Maybe we traded, or you know what I'm saying? Or I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, that was different, but as a young person, I think I felt shut down by that. Like, of course, starting out being like, I have so much respect for these people, and then to get nothing, for them to act like you're, you're nothing. I mean, it's a big reason why I have so much love and respect for Corey Norris. It's a huge name in the business. He's always been so nice to me for no reason. Like I'm no one to him, But I came and I got tattooed in his shop, first by somebody else, then by him, and I guest spotted. He was just always so nice. He answers questions. He's friendly. He's warm. He's got his boundaries, but he's clearly he knows his shit. He's not worried that someone's going to steal his secrets or his clientele or whatever the other people are worried about.
I mean, I feel like there's just some people that's like a confidence, right? In a sense, it's like you're fine. You're fine. They're not stealing your jobs. You know what I'm saying? They're not going to. One of the tattoo artists that I really admired, in like cis white guy, was Chris Kahn, and he worked up the street, and I always thought he was like a really nice person, and I always really admired his work to this day.
Yeah, his work was beautiful.
He was he was really close to Black and Blue in proximity, and I feel like I got a little tattoo by him that still looks really great, and he just was different. And I feel like too he struggled a lot with that weird attitude that people had in the industry, and but that's one of the artists that I really liked a lot. And one of my other favorite artists was Zeph, that I worked with for many years at Black and Blue, and I really like Zeph's work a lot because it was very like illustrative and fanciful, but just very, I don't know, and then also just like a good person and trying to do good on the planet, and politicized, but just a very interesting person. But I don't know, I feel like all the people that I've come across in my life in this industry, working with them, I feel like are very talented, good people. I don't feel like I've had terrible people that I've worked with, you know. And even if they were not great humans, for instance, I would always, I'd still admire their work. You know what I'm saying? I feel like I've worked with a couple people where I was like, you're not nice, you know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you do a brilliant work.
Yeah. Artists are complicated, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just being an artist doesn't make you an angel.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would like to ask you, what is your very favorite meal? Like if you had to have a last meal situation, what would you have?
I feel like this is very easy. I feel like it would be nachos. I am very lactose intolerant, however, but it's the last meal, so who cares, right?
Perfectly
But
fine.
nachos,
Yeah, to have a ton
I
of
don't
cheese
know
for that.
why.
Okay.
The crunch.
It's the crunch.
Anything crunchy, probably.
Okay. Is there something that you are excited about in this next year? And what is a small thing that's been making you happy lately?
I've really, we're very kind of future thinking, I think, as Aquarians, but I don't know. I feel like I'm finding myself again, if that makes sense. I feel like what I'm excited about is sort of to find my voice again as a person, and to be able to express myself more freely in so many ways. I guess that would be what I would be looking in the future. This, for instance, I think is a beginning, right? But I'm very excited about my African violets, so that I would say is probably my special interest. I have a few plants in my studio, but I decided a long time ago that I was just going to concentrate on African violets, and I don't know why, but they like this studio a lot, and they like me, and they're pretty healthy. I've propagated some, which is kind of different because they don't like to have their leaves wet, and they flower inside, and I feel like the ultimate grandma plant, and I probably have about 30 of them.
You're cultivating your inner grandma as you are transitioning to a more mask, sort of a physical way of being. I love that for you.
My inner old person.
Okay, inner old person.
Crone, or I don't know what that would be.
Beautiful.
Warlock.
Thank you for agreeing to be on my baby podcast. I have long loved and admired you and your work, and I so appreciate you spending this time with me and answering my questions and being so open. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.